everyone. Welcome to this new episode of featured interviews for KCrushAmericaMagazine. Today is one of my special interviews for the 2024 Toronto Real Asian International Film Festival, and I'm very happy to be joined today by filmmaker Gillian McKercher and actor Andrew Phung to talk about their film Lucky Star, which is premiering at the festival. So this film talks, I think, a lot. It's about family. It's about this family of four. It's the father, Lucky, the mom, Noelle, and their two daughters, Gigi and Jenny. And it talks about the luck of a family, but also I think the dysfunction of a family and what happens when you have secrets and lies from each other when you don't really know who the person you're married to is, or to the children that you have. So I'm very interested to talk to both Gillian and Andrew about this film. So first of all, Gillian, talk to me about coming up with the idea for Lucky Star, because I think just the title alone is very interesting because there's a saying across not only in Asian culture, but I think a lot of cultures where you say you're born under a lucky star, where there are people who have inherent luck, but lucky, as his name would suggest, is not as lucky as you would think, at least not in the ways you think. So talk to me first about coming up with this story.
I have heard a lot of stories throughout my life, and I come from a huge family, and we love to gossip, we like to talk, and I've heard a lot of stories about a certain character, a certain type of man, a father often, who is really disappointing and really hard to understand, like, why his family still loves him and sticks by him. Like, I've heard stories from, hardcore stuff, but also, like, estrangements and things where you're just like, yeah, my dad is disappointing me. So I really was inspired to tell this story as a character study, to understand, like, okay, if the kids still love their dad, there must be some good there. Mm-hmm. And I have actually a really good relationship with my dad, so I was trying to imagine, okay, well, if I take the good qualities of my dad and then put him through all of the stories that I've heard of other people, how will that come out as a film? So that's how I started. But I was also really interested in cheating. Like, what does it mean when we cheat and have shortcuts to try to get ahead? Does it actually help us get ahead, or does it just cause more dysfunction and challenges in our life?
Yeah, so you talk about cheating. So and I like how you actually use cheating as a metaphor in this film, because the dad, played by Terry Chan, when you talk about cheating, the first thing people are going to go to is infidelity, matrimonial infidelity. But in this case, the cheating is not only cheating in what Noelle trusts him to do, which is not to gamble, because she knows that he is a habitual gambler, that once he starts doing it, he might not be able to stop, and it's caused friction in their relationship. Like, nothing is said explicitly, but you get the sense that their relationship has been on the rocks many, many times because of his habitual gambling. And the cheating is the gambling is his mistress, as people would say. And is the thing that I find very interesting about Lucky is that he's not a bad father, he's not a bad husband, but it's the choices he makes that puts his relationship with his family in jeopardy. It's the keeping the secrets about where they are financially. It's about keeping secrets about how he's stressed about not being able to provide for them, and that's another thing. Like, everything, like, he is what you would call the breadwinner, even though, like, Noelle works, he's taken on the role of everything that he earns has to go directly to Noelle, like, she's the one in charge of the finances. But interestingly enough, so is Gigi. Talk to me about Gigi being his financial advisor. She's a college student, she's getting ready to graduate, and here she is managing her father's finances along with Andrew's character, who is an actual accountant. So yeah. Like, I find it interesting. Lucky has two accountants in his life, and he's still not managing financially. So, Gillian, I want you to talk about Gigi, and then for you, Andrew, I'm going to ask you to talk about your character, his perspective as a dad, and in this situation. So, Gillian, you go first. Talk to me about his financial advisors.
Yeah, I do want to, right before I talk about the father-daughter relationship, I think something I was interested about as well when I wrote this story was shames and guilt. So a friend distinguished the two for me, that guilt is I did a bad thing, but shame is I am a bad person, or I have these bad qualities. And I think that to feel shame or to be ashamed, you have to admit that you've done the bad thing. And I think for Lucky, when people ask him if he needs help, if he says, yes, I need help, that means that he has to admit that he has made mistakes. And I think he's so avoidant and doesn't want to identify that way. So coming to his daughter, I think I was really interested in what happens if like the boundary of like what a father-daughter relationship is different. So usually it's like the father or the parent who helps the child. What if it's actually now the child who is helping the parent, and it becomes, and there's a sort of a power dynamic there, right? Like, of course, at least in the families I know, and I think that this has something to do with like the Chinese diaspora, the children are always trying to seek approval from their parents and do everything they can to be good to them. And of course, they would never like cut them out. Well, at least none of the kids who I know would ever cut their parents out, or if they do, it would be like super dramatic. So I just wanted to push that relationship and see how far we could take it. And I think Grace, Gigi, really, she understands Lucky more than anyone else because they're kind of the most open with each other. And like they kind of are open, like they get each other
Yeah.
in a strange way that you do with your kids. So that's something I was really interested in between them.
Mm. And Andrew, talk to me about your perspective on the situation between Lucky and Gigi. Not only because like your character is his financial advisor, you know, he's the one who's telling him this is what you need to do. There's you can handle this if you would just take the right steps, which is like going to the bank, like let's come up with a proper financial plan. But then as a father, he's seeing that Lucky is relying too much on Gigi, you know, he's like as great as Gillian is saying, he's breaking that barrier, you know, that boundary of like instead like Grace isn't just his friend, she is his financial advisor, which is the position no child should have to place her, especially at her age. But even once you, and usually that happens usually in late stage of, you know, their parental and child relationship. You know, for instance, when your parents are older, you know, they can't like look after themselves. Usually that's when the child steps in and say, okay, this is when I'm going to manage your finances, you know, look after you. But she's doing it. She's a college student, which and she doesn't have to, and she shouldn't have to. So Andrew, talk to me about your perspective on this.
And firstly, I'm in Toronto traffic is bonkers right now because
Is
yeah, I'm stuck in Toronto traffic right now. But for me, like I'm a father, and so watching this movie was actually like there were moments that were like pretty tough watching it because I was seeing such a realistic portrayal of family and the flaws of family, and seeing these relationships made me really reflect on my larger family. Like gambling addiction is like a really large, kind of unspoken problem in Asian families. And so seeing this family go through this was something I really connected to because I know it's been it's been such a predominant thing in my larger family as a whole. Like I remember years ago, my dad, I would always tell my dad, "Hey dad, like you should retire. You're getting up there in age." And my dad was so reluctant to retire. And he said, "Andrew, what will I do?" And he says, "My biggest fear with retiring is that I will end up at the casino." And that really stuck with me. And my people ask me, "Oh, do you gamble?" And I say, "I don't," because anytime I gamble, like, you know, $5, $10, if I play at poker, like a $10 buy-in game with my friends, I feel it in my blood, you know? And I'm like, ooh, this could be a problem if I kept doing this. So watching this film back, I understand the flaws of these characters. I understand their turmoil. I relate to it in an odd way. And it's one of those things where you feel like the way Gillian has shot this film and made it feels like I'm a fly on the wall watching this family kind of spiral. And you want to say, please don't do it. Don't go. And of course, Lucky goes and does these things. And so I related to this movie as a whole. And it was a joy to play the best friend with the heart of gold because, you know, Darren's character is like a good person, and I aspire to be that character like Darren. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this movie as a whole. And I remember when Gillian asked me to make the movie, she had sent me like a firstly, Gillian's my friend, and so you wrote me this like really professional like letter, and it was
Yeah.
like, Andrew, it's unlike any movie you've ever done. I've never seen you do this before. And I was like, oh damn, throwing down the gauntlet. in the letter, and she's right, because I got when the movie screened in Vancouver and Calgary, I got a message from Andrea Bang, my co-star on Kim's Convenience for 5 seasons, and she's like, just watch Lucky Star. It's so good. I've never seen you do a role like that before. You should keep doing roles like this. And I was like, okay, mission accomplished. So it was like a joy to be in something serious and grounded.
Mm. Yeah, because the character of Darren is, as I said, he's Lucky's financial advisor, but I think he's also like his conscience. He's like the conscience that's whispering on Lucky's shoulder, saying, "Don't do this. You know it's gonna be bad." Because it's one thing for Noelle, the wife, and for Gigi, the daughter, to be telling Lucky, like, you shouldn't do this. Like things are like, this is a problem, because they have a very, very personal stake in it. In every decision he makes, they have a personal stake. But Darren doesn't have that kind of personal familial stake, but he sees what's happening, because he knows who Lucky is. He understands that Lucky does have a problem with gambling, but he also understands his finances, and he understands what putting the weight of responsibility on Grace is doing to her. But he's also just saying, my guy, just like, use your head, like, think common sense wise, like the whole thing with where he got scammed for the taxes. My first question was like, no, the CRA is not going to be just calling you up so they'll send you a letter. I was like, where's the letter, Lucky? I was like, where's the letter, Lucky? like, do you not know how the Canadian system works? So when Darren says that, did you not get the letter? I was like, thank you. I'm like, Darren was me in that moment. I'm like, that was a very realistic thing, because if you're Canadian, you understand how this works. So Darren was like, but I do see Darren as his conscience, because he's saying like, don't do it, like, don't do it. But then the other thing that I think that I really like about this film is that it's showing like people do struggle, as you were saying, Andrew. People do struggle with addiction, and it's not and sometimes for people, it's not that they want to, they don't want to. Lucky doesn't want to, because he understands, using the term from poker, the stakes. He understands what's at stake with his family. And he doesn't want to, because he's fighting the compulsion, because not only does he not want to destroy his family, but he also knows, as you mentioned at the beginning, Gillian, there's a difference between shame and guilt, and he does feel both, and I think he's embarrassed, because he doesn't want to disappoint his family, especially Grace, because like he said, I borrowed a few $100s from you. That's different. He's like, I don't want to be borrowing thousands of dollars from you, because like that's a whole different level of responsibility, and that's where we see the shame come out of him. That's when you realize that this man, he really does struggle with the shame and guilt. And I want to talk about something else that I thought was interesting, like for Noelle. As I said, everyone in this film has secrets, like especially the three main adults, they have secrets. And Noelle has the secret with this watch that she's taken. She's like, she's not sure she's gonna sell it. And I immediately understood why she took it, because that's her backup plan. Because while she loves Lucky, she doesn't fully trust him. And she needs a way out, just in case, because she has to protect two daughters. She's like, I love you, you're my husband, but these girls are my priority. So talk to me about this watch and the metaphor of this watch in this film.
Well, first off, my in-laws actually found a watch, like a long, long time ago. They found a Rolex, and they tried to return it, but I just thought that was really inspiring, like seeing a watch. Like, what would you do? Would you try to return it, or would you try to cash in on what you just discovered? And for Noelle's situation, I thought that people could put themselves in her shoes, where at first it's like, oh, what's she going to do? But as the film progresses, it's like, okay, her situation, taking the watch, like, she might think that the person who she took it from, because it's implied who she took it from, he can afford to lose the watch, but she could gain everything from having the security of the watch. And I think that it's a sort of a moral gray zone. And we've heard about situations where stuff like this happens, where I know that in my gossiping, I've heard like maybe an elderly father, things get taken from his house from like a cleaner or from somebody who takes care of him. This is just, stories that I've heard throughout my life. But for Noelle to be the one to do it, I thought it's like, okay, that's recognizable. It's something like she could immediately get cash from it. She can figure something out. What is she going to do? And then she's also keeping secrets from Lucky because she, of course, wouldn't want to tell him because that would be super humiliating to him. And it would also mean she doesn't trust him. So to me, that shows that there's already a huge lack of trust within the family unit.
Yeah, it's eroded, and it kind of shows that's for a lot of women, like having a backup plan is important. Like it is important. You don't want to do it again, just as like he doesn't want to gamble because he's using the gambling in this case as his backup plan for his financial backup plan. That watch is her financial backup plan, And I also understood like the worry of being accused because I've done what would be considered domestic work. I've done a lot of jobs, but I've also worked as like a nanny and as a personal cleaner for someone before. So like especially as a woman of color, like we know if something goes missing, we're the first people that are gonna our names are gonna get called. I've worked in retail here in Canada and back home where again, if something goes missing, we're the first people that people are going to turn to. So she does also have that worry of not only the guilt of taking this watch and what that watch symbolizes in her family, but she's also thinking of what this just means for her personally. Like it could cause her to lose her job because even if she didn't take it, he like she would be the first person accused. So like there's all of these different layers that you add into who these characters are, and I want to talk to you both now about I love films that have metaphors and concepts. And like the film is called Lucky Star and it's talking about like Lucky being lucky. But I looked because poker is a theme in this film. I don't know anything about poker besides a straight flush, a royal flush, and the sound by Kenny Rogers. That's all I know about poker. But I did look up the term because there's a scene where Lucky talks about he had this king and queen suit, and he talks about it was the first time he ever lost it, and I looked it up. And it says that King Queen suited is a pretty premium hand, but it doesn't stop your average poker player from playing it poorly. And I kind of saw that as a metaphor for the relationships in this film. Everyone has a fan. They have like this really good family. Like Darren and Lucky have a really good friendship. There's a trust there. But Lucky, thinking that he's always such a great player, isn't considering the weight of what he's doing. He has this a good hand, a good set of cards, but he's playing them poorly and it's costing him so much. So I want you both to talk about how people can just very easily mess up the premium hands they're dealt.
I'll go really quickly and then Andrea, sorry, I just saw you about to answer. Basically, one thing that I talked a lot about this with my editor, Phung, who is like an amazing person to work with. We talked a lot about what would it mean metaphorically if we never see him lose at poker, but he loses his family, he loses everything. So it's kind of like that's something we were really interested by, is like he's really good at playing the cards, but in life the cards he's dealt, he spends them freely and sadly he loses them, right? So that was something that was guiding us as we were making the film. And even in the decision with Darren and Lucky at the impound lot, I think that's another one of those like, okay, you can admit, like, what are you going to do? And he just sort of does the cowardly thing and runs away. Yeah.
It was funny, honestly, but yes.
Well, it was like fight or flight, sometimes people flight.
Very much so. He flew fast and hard. It was just like, Lucky, where you going? But Andrew, talk about that because like, like they had a good friendship and like Darren and like Lucky, he just, instead of being upfront, and being honest, like it could have been fixed in that moment, but he chose, as Dennis said, he chose to take the flight path. He messed up the hand.
Yeah, like that's a really good observation of the film. Like to see that, like, yeah, we never see him lose at poker, but we see him lose his hand with his family. I think this film is just dripping in metaphors and honestly a lot of unspoken things happening, which is like so indicative of the Asian community, but I think a lot of cultural communities, there's a lot of unspokenness, and I think oftentimes the Asian community is looked at as like Asian success is this thing that's like taken for granted and assumed. Like years ago, I remember there was a Power Rangers movie that showcased Asian family that didn't have money, and I read an article being like, it's so rare to see an Asian family that after Crazy Rich Asians were coming out, but actually seeing Asian families that are under the poverty line and actually struggling. And so I think there's a lot of unspoken in regards to money and deceit and cheating in this film that really resonated with me. And I held off on watching any of the screeners that Gillian had
Oh,
sent me. She said, yeah, she sent me a bunch of screeners. Like, do you want to see a cut? I'm like, no, don't want to see it. Even in ADR, I ADR'd a couple lines, and I was like, I don't want to watch anymore. I don't want to see any of it, because seeing it in a full theater, I could sense so many stomachs dropping and people just feeling like they were seeing themselves in the film. And so I think you picked up on something that's really a big takeaway from this film, and the amount of metaphors and Gillian has layered in here. And Gillian, I don't know if Knox, a film director, wrote me after, because she had seen the film and said that this film, in so many ways, is redefining a new genre in storytelling. And it really, like, was a compliment to the film and the cast and crew. But it really stuck with me because I truly think this film does something so special in that it takes a story that is relatable and hard to watch because it feels so real, and does it in a way where you feel for the character, you're mad at the character, but then you understand the character. I think that's really important. It takes you on this, like, full emotional journey. But for Darren, after seeing the film, I realized something. I think at the end of the day, Darren would still be friends with Lucky, because Lucky is one path of Darren if he didn't go the other way. Like, Darren and Lucky started out together. They were young, they were stupid, they gambled, but then Darren, went one way. I think Lucky is the embodiment if he didn't go straight and narrow. And I think that's why Darren will always be there for Lucky, because if he's not there for Lucky, he's not there for himself.
yeah. No, I kind of saw them as, in my head, as after the film ends, they do become friends again, but it's just that they needed that break, like Darren needed that space for himself and said, you need to face consequences. And one of your consequences is me giving you the silent treatment, and like he's getting the consequences from the family, but he's getting the consequences from his friends as well. And I think that's important. And like, yeah, like I'm not Asian, I'm not part of the Asian community, but like so many of this films is very Canadian centered. And I think that many people of color in general would relate to. They said it related to Noelle and like that situation at the retail store at where she works, but also just that it may seem trivial to some people where like the whole situation with the CRA and the income taxes and stuff, but that's a very real Canadian issue. Like having to, like, a lot of people go to like the payday loan places because that is their last resort, that they don't have a choice. And like a lot of people outside of Canada don't understand how expensive Canada is to live in, and like all of these bureaucratic and logistical red tape you have to go to be able to like get access to money and to like become solvent again. And like for Lucky, like when he leaves, like he goes to the payday loan place and he leaves. And my first thought was like, stay, call the police. But then I remember, wait, Carolyn, you remember like when the payday loan places, like you're not really as a customer protected. You don't have any legal recourse. You can't sue them. You can't demand you get back your money. It's gone. Thousands of dollars gone just like that. And that's a very real situation that hundreds of thousands of families all over Canada is facing. So like Gillian, first of all, kudos to you to, I think, very, even adding in something like that would really resonate with a lot of people because you drive past those places every day and you see people going in. And like I myself, as a disabled person, like I have to be on disability because of my I'm on like ODSP, and I don't have any problems sharing that because of my disability. I can't have like a regular full-time job. And I myself have contemplated going to a payday loan place because just is like I can't work, like I can't. And like the money that I get isn't enough. And like Canada is becoming increasingly expensive. So like just to you, Gillian, I have to say like kudos for like making this film as relatable and realistic as possible. And so for the two of you, we're gonna wrap up now. My last question is, as I said, the film is about cheating, it's about lies, it's about family, it's about friendship, it's about being lucky. I want you both to talk about, because I think it's important that we acknowledge that life is hard and like everyone has challenges. Like from the outside, people will look at their family and say, like they have it all, the cars, the house, like people think if you have a mortgage, you've made it. I'm like, but do we really want mortgages anyway? But I want you both to talk about how this film has kind of perhaps changed your perception of what being lucky means, because I think the film is about how we look at luck. Like luck has all of these different things, but for both of you, can you talk about what luck means for both of you? And Andrew looks like he's thinking, so Gillian, I'd ask you to go first.
I think that you create your own luck. Now, there are some things which are very clear, like you can't, first of all, there's very little that you there's a lot of things you can't control in your life. Like you can't control who your parents are, you can't control what language you end up speaking. There are so many things that we don't control, but within that circumstance, within whatever circumstance you have, I think you can create your own luck by the choices you make within your community. And sometimes luck it doesn't seem lucky. It's more like you have a choice, and it's like an opportunity comes to you, and you could take it or you can say no. And then it's only later that you think, oh, that was lucky, or it wasn't lucky. So I think my view on luck is life is a lot of hard work and like being open to opportunity. But I also do think that some people definitely have way more luck than others. I think that's just kind of the grind of life, and what makes life is so unfair, and it can be casually cruel. That's how I feel about life right now. But I think there's also a lot of beauty in the small luck that we can also create for ourselves.
Andrew?
Well, that's a really good answer. Yeah, like creating your own luck. There's like things we can and cannot control. I don't really know if I have an answer because I've never really thought about luck. Like I think for me a lot sometimes luckiness or being lucky is like a perception. Like if you think you're really lucky, it's because you're perceiving certain things as good. So you're like, well, I've been really lucky because I've gotten these things. But lucky is a good example. He's worried about the money and his perception that he's unlucky, but he's so lucky with love and life. Like if he focused on the family and he focused on his partner, one could argue he was the luckiest man in the world to have these two kids that love him, and to have a daughter, who's like working really hard and so always there for him, and having a partner who's been his ride or die, but he focuses on other things. So I think luck sometimes is what you focus on. So it is like very much a perception thing, but I try not to think about it because I just realized something. I try not to think about it because I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
Which in itself is like an oxymoron of like I don't believe in luck because I don't think about it because I don't want to jinx it, but I don't believe in it. So wait. So yeah, but Jillian's got a great answer. My answer is like all over the place. I can't even answer it.
I
Yeah.
understand because my mom does my thing is my mom is very Christian. She's very like she believes in you like speaking things into being. She believes in like you can speak. There's power in the tongue. You can speak things into being. But then she's also of the mind, just like you, Andrew. She'll be like, but don't jinx it. Like don't say too much about the thing you're really anticipating because you just might jinx it. So it's like that contradiction because and I think it's because humans are very complex and the way we think about the world and the way we see the world, like we want so many different things at the same time. Like we know there's things like life, as you said, Jillian, is very fickle and it can all just flitter away like very easily. So like you want it, but then you just like suddenly just like you don't want it too bad, So like you don't want it just too much. You just want it just enough. So I think I like both of you have very good perspectives on that. And again, using a metaphor and a saying, like say like luck is what you make of it. So I think that's very much it. But I know we have to go now, but thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time for talking to me. Yay, and congratulations on the film.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.